So, the cues and clues that your child gives you every day are such important nuggets of information. So, today we're going to be talking about what you can observe either as a parent or teachers about your child's behavior. Simple things like what color marker do they like to use? Or what kind of clothes do they like to wear? What kind of games do they like to play? And we're going to take those clues and we're going to use them to talk about positive behavior strategies. So I am so excited because today we have a special guest, although she's going to remain invisible. And we will talk about that in a second. But I wanted to introduce you to her. Her name is Kiki McGough. No, I'm going to pronounce her last name wrong, Kiki. It's McGough. Kiki McGough. And she's going to tell us a little bit about herself and some of her previous professional and personal experiences with a variety of ages and kiddos. I met Kiki first in Colorado when she was working for the Colorado Department of Education, and I was working for Colorado's Parent Training and Information Center, which a lot of you may know of is Peak Parent Center. And Kiki has always been like this person that she just exudes professionalism. She knows how to tap into kids. And she just has this innate ability to look at a child and be able to relate to them, engage them. So I'm so excited. So what we're doing today, because we were having technical difficulties and we couldn't get Kiki to show up on camera or to hear her. So we're going to be broadcasting this a little bit different today. She's going to be on my speakerphone. I'm going to be going through her slides, and we want everybody to cross fingers, cross toes, pray to the technology gods that this new way of doing a live stream is going to work for us. So Kiki, do you see us? Do you see me?
I do not see you.
Then that's funny. That's going to make it even harder for you to know what the slides are. So let me ask our viewers. So Terry says that she can see and hear me. So Kiki, you should be able to see and hear me too. Do you want to refresh that Facebook page?
I can.
Did you say you can?
Wait, if I do live videos, then I can do it. If I go over to the side.
Okay.
Do you want to refresh that Facebook page? I can. Well, that won't work.
Did you say you can?
Wait, if I do live videos, then I can do it. If I go. All right, I'm refreshing the page. Okay. Otherwise, there's going to be a delay, a weird delay.
Right. So let me show you. The other thing that we can do is today is my 101 Facebook Live show. So if you can guess what my shirt has to do with our 101 show today, write that in the comments because I'll give you a free book. So do you see us now?
I can see you now.
Oh, good. So then this is the show.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll start with, we don't want that. We want to start with your slides, right?
And I'll tell you when I see them.
Okay, so there's a little bit of a delay, but you should see it now. Do you see it?
Yes.
Okay, and then our live viewers, can you hear Can you hear Kiki? So Kiki, go ahead and start, and I'll see if people are saying that they're hearing you.
Okay, I am all ready to get started. I apologize for the delay, and I'm ready to talk about who I am and what I'm going to do today.
Great.
Yes, I see a yes.
You can go.
Okay. So I'm just going to say okay when it's time to move on to the next slide, because I'm not real good with little musical notes and things right now.
That's fine.
So if you want to move on, we'll do a little bit about me. Is the next slide.
Yeah, and there's just a little bit of a delay, but I have it up.
Okay. So, and this is important to me, and at the end, you'll see where it ties together. I grew up in Pittsburgh, and I was one of 6 children, and people who know me well will not believe me that I was actually very shy in school. There were many years when I don't believe that I even spoke at school, and once a teacher kept me after school until I would say something to her, and then after an hour, she sent me home. So interestingly enough, I began my career in special education. I knew when I was 10 and 11 years old that was something I wanted to do. So I began right after undergraduate school, and I got my master's degree when I was 22 years old, and I retired last year after 43 years in special education. I'm also the mother of 3 very creative and I think unique individuals. My daughter went on to get her degree in theater drama. My son is a modern dancer, and my youngest child got his degree in fine arts and sculpture. So they're very creative. But I had to learn early on to advocate for them to be successful and to be able to still stay true to who they were, because they were not a perfect fit all the time for the public school system. I happily also have a very feisty granddaughter. Her name is Kate, but she is Mary Catherine the 6th, or the 7th. I am Mary Catherine the 5th. First daughter of the first daughter for 7 generations is named Mary Catherine, and we all have K nicknames. And as of 2 weeks ago, she now spends every Wednesday with me doing grandma-granddaughter things. And perhaps I do have an outside-the-box approach to supporting children and families. And I hope to share some of that with you today through some stories. So the next slide. I'm very firmly committed, and anyone who has worked with me knows that no matter how skilled professionals are, nor how loving families are, each cannot achieve alone what the parties working together hand in hand can accomplish. So when I was in the school district as a special ed teacher, as a special ed administrator, in early childhood as a mental health and disabilities coordinator, I clearly wanted positive outcomes for kids, but I was just as invested as making sure that families were able to successfully partnership with the school to support their children. Because children are with their families 24/7, and they know their children better than anyone else. And I don't know that is always heard by professionals. So I have a strong focus on working with families. The next slide is from a presentation at the Colorado Department of Education. And they also have a strong commitment to family partnerships. And I hold firmly to these 4 core beliefs: that all parents have dreams for their children, and they want what is best for them. Parents have the capacity to support their children's learning, and sometimes they need the school districts and the professionals to support them in that, but they can do it. Parents and the school staff should be equal partners, and the responsibility for building partnerships between school and home rests primarily with the school staff and school leaders to reach out and welcome families and create that positive environment and relationship. So how did this presentation come about? The next slide talks a little bit about faith. And I did a presentation previously for Charmaine on behavior support strategies, and I shared a story about faith. In a nutshell, when I moved from a school district to the Colorado, the next slide talks a little bit about faith. Oh, I'm getting weird feedback
I know.
now.
Sorry. Go ahead.
That's okay. I won't listen to myself. But anyway, it started with faith because when I moved into the Department of Education, I went back to visit a school in my role as the positive behavior support coordinator. And the preschool teacher heard that I was in the building and asked if I would just stop in and take a look at a child. And there's always been a perception, and I appreciate Charmaine saying it, that I am able to pick up interesting patterns and observations in a way that if I spend time in the classroom, I tend to see things that other people perhaps have not seen, and I'm able to put puzzle pieces together, help problem solve, and to come up with some creative solutions. So this teacher was great. When I was working with her, everything I asked her to do, she did. So I said, absolutely, let's just do it. So I went in to visit, and I asked what the problem is. And she said, Faith is a new little girl, just moved to Colorado from Mexico, and she screams. I said, and? She goes, no, she screams. So I go in, and here's this beautiful little girl, looks like the young Dora the Explorer before she became a teenager, in a little pink jogging suit with a little cute little haircut. I take one look at her, and she screams at the top of her lungs. And the teacher said, I told you she screams. I said, it's okay. So I come in, and the kids start coming in, and they put their belongings away, preschool classroom, and they all go over to the rug. I look at Faith, who goes over to the housekeeping area. And Pat says to me, oh, she doesn't sit on the rug. So I just kind of step back and I watch her in the housekeeping area. And in a matter of 5 to 10 minutes, she has set the table with a place setting of red, yellow, green, and blue, with a plate, a cup, a fork, and a knife, or a fork and a spoon, all in the appropriate place. So she knows how to set a table. She also has one-on-one correspondence, and she also was able to color match. After she puts them away, strength, she cleans up after herself, she moved over to the markers and put her little hands in and pulled out 5 pink markers in one hand, 5 purple in the other. I look at Pat and she says, oh, she likes pink and purple. Sits down, gets some drawing paper out, and makes circular strokes, horizontal and vertical lines. Again, she's a 3-year-old, and her drawing skills look pretty good. So after she cleans up, I look at Pat and she says, oh, she likes to draw. I said, okay. So then as she walks by the stuffed animals, Cookie Monster and Big Bird, she says under her breath very quietly, Cookie Monster, Big Bird. Pat says, oh, she likes Sesame Street as well. So then I asked Pat what they were going to do next because circle time was wrapping up, and she said they were getting ready to go outside. I happily would have pushed Faith on a swing, but when I looked at her, she did scream at the top of her lungs. So I played with some of the other kids outside, watching out of the corner of my eye. I asked Pat what they would be doing when they went back into the classroom. And she said they were going to do red and green alternating color Christmas chains. I said, could you do me a favor? Anything. I said, have one of the paraprofessionals cut some pink and purple strips and put them in the middle of one of the tables. So the kids come in, they walk over, wash their hands, and they go over to the table for the activity. Faith starts to walk toward the housekeeping area, stops, sees the pink and purple paper, and sits down at the table and is the first child to complete an alternating color pattern. She did them in pink and purple. She didn't do them in red and green. I looked at Pat and I said, she's the first one to finish. And she said, she's never sat at the table before. And I said, maybe you never had anything at the table that was engaging to her. So my suggestion to Pat was, when you go home tonight, stop at the Carpet Square store and get a pink carpet square and a purple carpet square. Go to Target and get a little pink basket with a handle and a little purple basket with a handle. Have Mom bring her in a few minutes early and let her put 5 small items in each of the baskets and pick which carpet square does she want to put on the rug and which basket does she want to put in her carpet square. I can't guarantee she's going to sit on the carpet tomorrow, but you've increased significantly the likelihood that she's going to sit there because she has a carpet square that she's selected and small items that she likes to hold in her hand because she likes to hold small things in her hand. But in that short observation, I was able to generate a whole strength list that Pat, as good a teacher as she was, didn't see because she was so focused on she doesn't participate and she screams. And actually, this little girl had lots and lots of strengths. So in talking to Charmaine, we talked about how to really take strengths and interests and observations and present that through some stories. So in the next slide, everything that I do, I start from a strength profile. And what I really want to know from families and from teachers, and hopefully together, is what are things that really hook this child? What do they really enjoy? What do they really do well? What do they find rewarding or motivating? Maybe it's not necessarily the sticker that the other kids might like, but it's helping carry something for the staff down the hallway that's most engaging. What are their favorites? Their TV show, their movies, their books, their sports, their video games, their characters that they're interested in. Because I can use these to develop a plan to engage the kids. Because we want every child to have a sense of belonging, to be engaged and to be learning in the classroom, and to be engaged and learning at home as well. And we want the adults to have a good relationship with the kids in the classroom, and we want parents and kids to have a good relationship together. So who are the people in the class that this child or at home are they most drawn to, or do they see the best behavior of? So the next slide is just one of my favorite visuals, and in reality, one size does not fit all. My kids, as I said, were very unique, had very different strength patterns, and certainly had different things that made them comfortable and helped them develop the nurturing relationships that they need. So I'm just going to briefly talk about my kids for a second. On the next slide is Meet My Child. My daughter, Katie, I call her Katie. She went to college, came back as Kat. But she is a special ed teacher now. She has a master's degree, but her degree, as I said, was in drama and psychology. She's passionate about things that she loves. Right now, she's very passionate about the number of children from refugee companies that are not getting their basic needs met. She's a world traveler. She recently went with a nonprofit for refugees over to Greece and worked in some of the camps over there, setting up educational programs for children so that they could be successful. She's a fantastic mother, wonderful mother, could not love that little girl anymore. And she's actually a great positive behavior support coach and does a phenomenal job with behavior planning, which makes Mom very proud. My second child is Patrick, and his birthday was on Wednesday, and he just turned 32 years old. When he was 2 years old, he asked me, "How old do you have to be to take dance lessons?" I had my daughter in dance lessons to help with her coordination, and he was interested from the time he was a baby watching the dance lessons. So he started dance at age 2, and I went out to see him in January, and the best performance I've ever seen. He is a modern dancer and works with several modern troupes in the San Francisco Bay Area. To make money, he is a parkour trainer and a cross fitness trainer. And he actually was the strongman of California for the 2017 year. But he is an independent thinker. He questions everything. And he is creating his own path. His path is very different from others his age. He's inspirational. When he was 7 years old, we were watching the movie Swan Princess. And don't ask me why I asked my 7-year-old son, but I looked at him and I said, "Patrick, what would you do if you had to choose between power and love?" It was the point in the movie where the prince had to decide, was he choosing his kingdom or staying with the woman he loved, even though she became a swan at night and couldn't leave the lake? And he looked at me and said, love is the greatest power of all. Not something you would expect coming out of the mouth of a 7-year-old. My youngest son and I do have pictures of Donovan in here. I told him once that every time I said his name, I would pay him $1. I still pay his iPhone bill, so we're okay with that. He was artistic, creative, a deep thinker, firm in his convictions. Another way, perhaps, of saying stubborn. People might label him stubborn. I found him firm in his convictions. Sensitive, but don't tell me sensitive. And he was truly a square peg in a round school system. When he was 4 years old, he came home and told me, I've given it a lot of thought. Kindergarten may not be very exciting, and I didn't really like preschool. And I thought, well, that's pretty true, because when you started, you sat in your cubby for a couple weeks, and I told people, leave him alone, and he will get there when he needs to get there. He said I don't know how to read. They might not have good math manipulatives. Show and tell might not be very exciting. So I think we should quit while we're ahead and I'm done with school. When he was in 2nd grade, he said, he did go to school. I had a very smooth transition, getting him in, finding a teacher that would be a good match for him. In 2nd grade, he came home and said, highly gifted child, what is 80% of 24? And I'm thinking, you're doing algebra in 2nd grade? I said, why do you want to know? And he goes, just tell me what 80% of 24 is. And I said, I'll tell you, but I want to know why. And he goes, fine, 80% is meet standards. If I know what 80% of 24 is, I can figure out how many math problems I have to do and skip the ones that are too hard. And I thought, whoa, maybe since you're solving for X in an algebraic equation, maybe you need to do the 20% of the hard ones and skip the 80% of the easy ones. You can imagine my absolute joy when he graduated from high school and was accepted to Cornell College in Mount Vernon, Iowa, on an art scholarship. His letters of recommendation came from his math teacher, who related to Donovan and said he reminded him of himself when he was in school. Donovan chose not to take AP Calculus because he didn't really want to do the homework. But in his free period, he signed up for AP Calculus assistant, and he graded other people's homework. So he developed the skills, but he just didn't want to have to do the work to go with it. For his college class, he took probability and statistics and discrete analysis. So that was his high school class. In spite of the fact that the teacher in 7th grade, when he was taking honors geometry in the gifted program, told me when I went to parent-teacher conferences that my son needs to know that only one of us is going to win, and it's not going to be him. And I thought, whoa, not a good start to a parent-teacher conference with your finger in my face. And she said, if he continues to put that garbage that he calls his work in the corner of the paper so small I can't read it, I will fail him in this math class, and he will fail every math class all the way through high school. I went home and I said, Donovan, I met your math teacher, and he pointed his finger in my face and said, and what did Miss Finger in your face have to say about me? And I thought, whoa, there goes the comedy improv classes that I paid for you for so many years. So it was quite the joy that he was accepted on a scholarship and that he scored 35 on the ACT in Colorado in math, even though he chose not to do the homework to turn in for it. So the next one, I just have to say, before you see my son, the next picture is my son's senior prom, where I absolutely mortified and embarrassed him because the nurse from the school and I, who were both on accountability for Jefferson County PTA, the theme was the 60s, and it fit right in because I kind of raised my kids in tie-dye shirts. So there's a picture of my family, and here we are at the senior prom. The next picture, I just got to tell you, you hook into your children's strengths. Donovan was a scientist. I would come home from parent-teacher conferences, my house would be booby-trapped, and when I opened the front door, a net would fall on me so that he could capture me. So our favorite show was Mythbusters. And I was at the airport coming back from a Down syndrome conference in Ohio, and I called Donovan on the phone in middle school, and I said, I think the guy from Mythbusters is at the airport. And he said, well, go and talk to him. Which one is it? I said, I don't know, the one with the beret. He goes, Jamie. As it turned out, he was on my flight, and I had a long conversation with him about how he got on Mythbusters. My son would never stop playing video games and drive to the airport to pick me up coming back from a trip. But believe me, getting your picture taken with Adam from Mythbusters was highly motivating. So indeed, Donovan was there to meet me at the airport. Senior year of high school, he was a live-action role-play kiddo, a video kiddo, never attended one school event, told me that he was going to the senior prom. You know, I tried not to fall on the floor and say, you got to be kidding me. And he said, I need you to make me a tie-dye tux. And I'm like, I'm not really in that position, but talk to me about it. So we found 2 tie-dye artists in Carbondale, Colorado. And indeed, he went to the senior prom in a tie-dye suit that we had made for him. And they were so excited about making it on the next slide that they only charged me $35 for it. So that, again, is utilizing his strengths and his interests. And I got into the prom, and he stood out in a typical Donovan fashion. When I picked him up from college sophomore year in May, he told me that he had a present for me. I was very excited. A Mother's Day present. Oh, my gosh. And I said, where is it? And he says, it's in that box. And I said, can I see it? He said, absolutely not. It's packed with dirty clothes. And I said, what is it? He goes, you'll just have to wait till we get home. 820 miles later, I opened it up. And the next slide is what he made me in one of his sculpture classes. And it is a tie-dyed bust with his long hair and his goatee in my favorite tie-dye colors, as a thank you for always making sure that I recognized what was important to him. It is in my dining room as a centerpiece 8 years later. So looking at the journey, how can we really pay attention, look at those key things that hook our children, that make a difference, and how can we use that information to work with the schools to come up with the best programs and supports for kids to be successful? Sometimes we have to take a step back and just watch. And parents and teachers rarely have the opportunity to step out of the situation and just observe. It's not like when you have a tantrum at bedtime, you can say, hang on just a second, let me back out, look at this from outside the box, think about it for a while, then I'll come on back in and I'll respond or I'll react. But if we pay attention and we take the time to reflect, okay, maybe it's after the kids have gone to bed, or if you're a professional in the school, after they've already gone home, we might see things differently. And we have to remember there is not only one answer. So my hope is that by sharing some of my stories, that you may step outside the box and see things from a different perspective. So if you can flip to the one that says Steph with a happy face. When I took over as a special ed administrator in a school district, immediately they have hotspots of where they want you to focus your attention. And frequently, those are families that are not happy with how things are going at school. So this is a little girl with a significant neurological disorder, input-output. It was understood that she got a lot more than she was able to show us, and her disability really prevented her from using her hands or from being able to speak. So it really was an impact. I always presume competence, and I had high hopes for this little gal. And even talking to the assistive technology team about using some resources and some visual cues and some switches and things, they pretty much told me they didn't think that she had the capacity to do anything like this. Well, I wasn't going to buy that. I watched this little gal Might have taken her 15, 20 minutes to get to what she wanted to do, and her hands didn't always point in the right direction. But I think that she really had a lot to tell us, and I think she knew what it is that she wanted and needed. So I developed a good relationship with Mom, especially since Mom was not real pleased with the programming going on in the school. And I said to Mom, one of the big issues was she would not sit in music class. She would get up out of her seat and move all over the place, okay? So I said to Mom, is there some visual, I couldn't get away from visually, she was so alert watching things. There had to be something that she noticed or fixated on. So I said to Mom, what is it that you've noticed that she really pays attention to? She says, excuse my language, that goddamn happy face, Kiki. She says, we go to the mall, and she gets stuck. There's balloons. There's pillows. And seriously, sometimes I just have to buy her something with a happy face, or she gets stuck and she will not take one step further. So I said, okay, well, I can start with a happy face. That's a pretty good one. She was being pretty much led down the hall by a paraprofessional, always had her by the hand, really not making many choices for herself. But I said, make her a placemat. Laminate a piece of paper with a giant happy face on it, and we're going to put that in the music room. She's in first grade, and that's where she's going to sit. We're going to work on having her identify her spot by sitting on the happy face. And they all looked at me like I'd lost my mind. Assistive technology said she doesn't recognize symbols. She's not at that level. I said, give me 2 weeks. Just try it for 2 weeks. The third day, she was walking down the hall with a paraprofessional who had the laminated placemat with a happy face under her arm, and it slid out because it was slick and slid down to the floor in the hallway. Steph immediately sat down on the placemat in the middle of the hallway because she already knew after 2 days that when that was on the floor, that was her place to sit. She stopped moving around the room in music class. She stayed on her happy place seat. But what we also were able to do was to mark from the special ed resource room to her first grade classroom. By putting intermittent happy faces on the wall, she was able to now go from one location in the building to the next by herself, being shadowed by a para, by following the happy face to where she was going. Mom called me one morning on a Monday and said, you are not going to believe what happened this weekend. I took her to the Payless shoe store with her sister, 13-year-old sister, because her sister needed shoes. And she says, I was so embarrassed. She kept walking and pacing, and she had a lot of hand-flicking movements. And she kept knocking over this like whole big box, these shoes piled on top of each other. And I kept saying, Steph, you can't do this. And I'd put the shoes back. 2 minutes later, she's over there kicking the shoes again. And then I noticed that after she kicked all the shoes over, that the box on the bottom had a picture of Eeyore on it. And she said Eeyore's her favorite cartoon that she watches at home, Winnie the Pooh. And I looked at that and I thought, oh my God, she's trying to get the Eeyore shoes. So I bought them for her. And after that, she took her to the store and let her pick out all her own clothing by giving her choices of 2 things and using an eye gaze for what she wanted, and giving her books of what she wanted to do and which one she wanted. Initially, I had a paraprofessional call me who was the mom of a child with significant needs and said to me, I couldn't believe the phone call, she says, Kiki, I'm in the resource room and there's really nothing for Steph to do. Not okay. Is it okay if I read her books? I'm thinking, oh my God. I said, you can read her as many books as she wants. Within 6 months, she not only could select the book that she wanted to read, if you put them on the edge of a table, she regained the use of her hands to pick the books up and bring them to you. And when Mom took her to the neurologist said she was the first child that he had met with Rett syndrome who had regained the use of her hands. And within 6 months after that, she was able to point to pictures on the refrigerator to identify the food items that she wanted. And she could pick a book up and turn the pages herself to read books. Mom said, I think it's great that she loves books, but oh my God, I don't get 1 minute of free time. Every time I turn around, she is pushing a book in my face to read to her because a paraprofessional said, is it okay for me to read a book? She transitioned on to middle school with a video of every child in the class sharing a story of what they learned from her before she moved on to middle school. One of the things that we did for the next slide is we came up with a detailed plan because she was obviously able to access learning if we provided the opportunities for her. So we task analyzed every routine throughout the day of what the paraprofessionals would be doing instead of just taking her by the hand and moving her. She got off the bus and the paraprofessional would be there to support her, but her two peers would walk her into the lunchroom. She had a device in her backpack that they would take out. She could hit the switch and it would be mom saying what kind of night she had at home so she could share with her friends and her staff about what she did and what she had for dinner last night. Before she went home every day, her two peer helpers would record a 2-minute message from mom, from Steph, talking about her day. And as soon as Steph got home from school, she would fling that backpack at mom. And as soon as mom got the switch out, she would hit it so that she could tell mom about her day. I asked mom, what did she do at home for her backpack? And she said, as soon as she comes in the house, she's have a white round laundry basket. And she can wiggle it off her back and it falls in the basket. I said, so the paraprofessionals don't have to take the backpack off and hang it up if she had a laundry basket. And the teacher said, I think I have a brown square one somewhere. I said, what's the one at home? She said, a white round one. I said, we'll get her a white round laundry basket. From that day on, they made a space in the classroom. When she came in the classroom, she went over to the white laundry basket. She dropped her backpack in by moving her arms, and she was able to independently do that routine herself. All because we paid attention and we noticed the little things, and because there was a good relationship with mom. As soon as mom saw something at home, she would call the school and tell us. As soon as we saw something at school, we would call mom, and it was implemented in both settings. The next little gal is Desiree. I changed all these names. I keep the first initial so I don't forget. And Desiree was a little girl, also had Rett syndrome, and she was moving into 5th grade. We had gone cross-categorical, which means that 5th grade was mine. I didn't know, and I had formerly been the teacher for the kids with severe emotional disabilities. So all the parents saw me with the most challenging kids in the building, and they really didn't know that I could actually do significant support needs as well. They saw me as the behavior person. So I didn't know that the parents were very nervous about their daughter being assigned to me because she had always been with a teacher with expertise in significant support needs. Well, as it turned out, my paraprofessional and this little gal had an immediate link to each other, and I was able to provide the support through the para to really help her be more independent. And for years, they had really worked on her using a switch and this and that. And the parents kept saying at the IEP, I don't care if she ever uses a switch. You know, I want her to hear music, etc., that it is so hard for her. We've worked on this goal forever. All we really want is for her to be happy and feel like she belongs. So we switched the goals up quite a bit. And she was leaving for middle school the next year. So this was like my 1 year to work with her to help prepare her to be a little bit more independent. So one day I get this little sticky note. We had a little crisis system in the building from one of the kids. And she was with a wonderful, she was a bilingual child, Hispanic grandmother type teacher, warm and welcoming and nurturing. And she allowed this little gal, Desiree, to walk around the room, and wherever she would find a child she wanted to be next to, she'd kind of tap her fingers on the desk, and the kids would run and get her a chair, and she'd sit with them for a while. She had a little bit of free reign and flexibility in this class. So I get this note, and they said, Mrs. Montoya is really upset she lost Desiree. And I'm like, how do you lose Desiree, right? It was very hot, and they had the door open. and she got up out of the room while Mrs. Montoya was getting a book, and she disappeared. And the wing was set up like a big E, so it had 3 different wings. Well, Desiree was found in the resource room 2 wings away, sitting in her snack chair because it was snack time and Mrs. Montoya forgot to send her down to snack. So she got up by herself, went down the hall, through the cafeteria, made a left-hand turn, went to the last room on the right-hand side, sat down and was waiting in there when the staff came in because she wanted her snack. We figured she probably had a little bit more independent skills than anyone had seen. So I wanted to set up a good transition for her going on to middle school. And they had like an A, B, and C group over there. And I wanted her to be with kids that she was comfortable with because it was going to be a much bigger setting. So I asked them if they would do a little activity with me. And because she would go over to kids' desks and tap on them, we could do it 2 ways. We could pick 6 kids to be her peer helpers over at the middle school, or we could let Desiree pick the 6 kids she would most like to be in class with. So we had each of the kids tape an index card in the corner of their desk. And for 1 week, if Desiree came over and stood next to you and tapped her fingers long enough to get a chair and sit down, then you made a mark on your card. And at the end of the week, the 6 kids that had the most marks on their card, surprise, surprise, were the same 6 kids that the staff had identified to be her peer helpers in middle school. But the staff didn't pick them. She picked them because those are the kids that she felt the most comfortable with and she wanted to be with. So we were able to incorporate them in the spring to go over to the middle school with her for weekly visits so that she could learn the building, be able to move from room to room, find the lunchroom, find the cafeteria, and anticipation of being in a new building with her friends. There's kind of a sad end of the story because at the end of 6th grade, she stopped breathing at night, and her life ended when she was 12 years old. But at her celebration of her life, one of the things I did when she left 5th grade, after the parents told me they were very reluctant to have me as their child's teacher because they didn't think I knew anything about significant support needs, we actually became really good buddies. They were very young parents when they had her, and I said to them, for the continuation for 5th grade, would it be okay if I embarrassed you just a little bit? And Jamie's like, oh God, Kiki, what are you going to do? I said, I promise it won't be too bad. He goes, both of our sets of parents are going to be there. I said, it'll be cool. I promise it'll be cool. He goes, okay. I had every student in the 5th grade class and every staff in the building. This is a long time ago. So they were handwritten notes, wrote a letter to Desiree's parents, thanking them for having her in the class and what they learned from her. And I put them all in a big book with all the transition pictures and everything that we had accumulated, which actually was a gigantic social story. And we presented it to the parents for her from her 2 best friends. And the special ed director was there, and it was a fabulous celebration. Well, a year later, at the celebration of her life at the Catholic Church, what do you think was there on the display with her but the white book that we had given her? And I saw the parents a year after that, and they said that it was the greatest gift that they ever received because it was their coffee table book. And everyone who came into the house flipped through and read and looked at the pictures, that the words from the students and the staff at that school kept her memory alive. And again, it was paying attention to what the parents wanted, what this little gal could do. Never once did she utter a word or make a sound, but by watching her and her interactions with people, who she connected with, what kind of environment she needed, she had the best life that she could possibly have while she was in school.
And Kiki, I just wanted to pause for a second because that is such a powerful story. And Lissa says, I wish we could clone wonderful, caring child advocates like you. So,
thank you.
Yeah, it's amazing the talent that you have, but also how others can develop that talent, I think. And I really hope that people are taking all of these ideas and trying to figure out how they can apply that to their own child's life, because so many times our kids aren't looked at as competent learners and aren't, presumed to be able to reach our high expectations. So I wanted to share with people that if they would like to get, and I think what I'm going to do, usually for show notes, I do a little bit different, but I think this time I want to do even more detailed kind of key takeaways from the show. So if you'd like a copy of our show notes, just type the word clues in the comments and you should get a response from my bot. And then after the show, I work on the key points and the quotations that are really meaningful, and also give you some other resources. So I just think that this is one show that for sure you'll want to come back and revisit. And I just needed to pause and just say thank you so much, Kiki.
You're welcome.
We are all just treasuring what you're sharing with us today.
Thanks. I got a couple more kids, if that's okay.
Yes, we like kids.
So the next one, if we just go through the slides, I'm going to say how it usually happens. Then I'm going to tell you what actually happened.
Now, Kiki, on my slide, I have the ideal process begins. Is that the one you want?
Yep, this is it.
Okay.
So ideally, if a child is moving through Child Find, coming into preschool, you get a call saying, I have my daughter, needs to be evaluated. She has significant medical needs, and we'd really like to work with you for a successful transition. That would be great if the family and the staff approach the situation that way. But on the next slide, you'll see, if that happened, then we would say, oh, yes, come on in and we'll do a parent interview. We'll look at the records because this little girl's in a medical day treatment program. We'll do a Meet My Child, Kiki's favorite strength and interest profile, and then we'll move forward from there. And then when I meet with mom on the next slide, I'd say, tell me about Melanie. What does she enjoy doing? What kind of toys and music does she like? What are your hopes and dreams for your child? And then, I would move on to the next one and say, you said she has some special needs. Help me understand what those are. Let's go over the assessments that you brought with us. What's going well? What do you have concerns about? And then we would sit down together and come up with an IEP and a transition plan to bring this child into the school district. If you slide to the next one, that's not what happened. So what we have is the real story. So go back one. Okay. Here's the real story. I get a phone call from my Child Find team, because I'm overseeing Child Find, saying we have a mom who's decided she does not want her child to enroll with us. She's eligible at age 3. She wants to keep her in a treatment program for her medical needs for an extra year. So what do we need to do? And I said, Mom has the right to say, I'm not interested right now. We need to send a letter saying, thank you very much for the eval. We'll contact you again next year when she turns 4 because this other program is ending. Great. Well, as it turned out, I didn't realize that my name as the Child Find coordinator was on the bottom of that letter. And when Mom got the letter, she called me. So I have not met the mom. I wasn't at the initial eval, and she was quite upset with me. So that was not a very good start to our relationship. But I'm going to presume best intentions and said, what I'd really like to do. I understand. I'm so sorry. What I'd really like to do is maybe next spring have a chance to go to the program and meet your daughter. She goes, why would you want to do that? And I said, well, if she's coming in the following fall, I'd love to see where she is and talk to the staff about things that are working and just get a chance to know her. She goes, all right, I guess that would be okay. So I contact her in the spring, ask permission to go. They're a little leery about this woman coming in to see this little girl in this setting. So I come in 2 different times, talk to the staff, hang out, and from that, I was then able to do my own Meet the Child based on the information that I gathered. And I found out, if you move to the next one, she's very comfortable with familiar staff. She does well when she knows her routines. She loves being up in her standard. I knew what kind of toys she liked. I knew her favorite colors. I knew that when she got overwhelmed, that they gave her a chance to be in a little quieter spot in the room. I knew that she really wasn't eating foods, but she liked to touch and taste things. I knew what she didn't really like on her tray versus things that she was interested in. I found out that her favorite thing was attention from her mom, that she could, if you gave her a choice of 2 toys, she could pick one, that she loved quiet, soothing music, that she could activate toys with switches and things, that she could look at pictures in books, that she liked bright colors. I found out her favorite color was green. Her favorite toy was a VTech toy with monkeys. And when I bought one, it was in the back of my car, and every time I turned, the monkeys would start clapping, and it drove me nuts. I found out that she slept with a little glowworm, that her favorite songs were The Wheels on the Bus and the ABC song. So I had all of this information before I even met the mom. I also knew what she didn't like, how she was overwhelmed. When she really couldn't take it, she put her hand over her face, and they called it melting, which meant get me out of this situation, get me to a quiet place, or I'm going to start screaming pretty soon. And from that, if you go forward a few, I was able to at least initiate a conversation with mom and find out receptively how they communicated with her, expressively how she was able to communicate. And I think that I had a really good picture of this little girl to help create a program for her to come into our school district. I was then able for mom to go on and create a strength and needs profile, really highlighting all of the things that I learned about her, so that mom could see how all the assessment data fit in, which is all great. But the best thing of the story is I had not met mom yet. And she brought the little girl in for the updated evaluation after I had been there a couple of times. And I walk into the child find room, and mom's holding this little gal, cute little thing on her lap. She has spina bifida, lots of physical challenges. And as soon as I walk in, the little girl smiles at me, and mom hands her to me and says, well, the staff at the school said she seemed to like you quite a bit. Would you mind holding her during the meeting? And I thought, bingo, I did my homework. I had all the strength information. I came on soft, not hard and heavy. I came through the back door, and I developed a relationship with this little girl and the staff at her school before I even met mom. But the staff at the school gave mom feedback. We can't believe that this person actually came a couple times. She hung out. She helped us out over lunchtime. You know, Melanie really seemed to like her. She even let her pick her up. So by the time I met mom, we now had the beginning of a relationship that allowed us to create a plan for her to come into the school system for her 4th birthday in a very positive way. And the mom actually worked with us to put together a presentation at one of the national conferences, and it just set the stage for this little girl coming into public school from a mother who was, I think, just so terrified at the thought that she would be in a setting without a full-time nurse, to coming into public school with the idea that maybe there were people who were going to give her daughter a chance, that she would be safe, her medical needs would be met, and that we could partner together to create the very best plan for this little girl. So you can just flip through. There's just lots of examples, and I don't know if people have access to the PowerPoint to look at all the strategies and things, but just from the conversation and presenting it in a way for Mom from a strength angle, she was able to see that in spite of the fact that her little girl had very significant cognitive and medical issues, that we were able to come up with a plan to communicate with her in the absolute best way. For this one, I said to Mom, what do you say at home? She said, when we switch from one routine to the next, I always say, it's time to. So I told the staff, this is what she hears at home. You need to use the words, it's time to. When she seems upset, I say to her, show me what you need. When she has a really hard time and I can't get to her right that minute because she has a little brother as well, I say to her, I hear you, I'm coming soon. When she doesn't want to try something and she just kind of gets frustrated, I say, I think you can do it yourself. So the phrases that Mom used at home became the cornerstone of the communication within the classroom of how to encourage her to try new skills, to persist, to wait until the staff could meet her immediate needs. But they were the exact same words that came from Mom that really, again, built that positive relationship. And time-wise, I'm probably behind where I need to be.
Well, so Kiki, is it okay if I share your PowerPoint with people?
Yeah, that's fine. I don't have anyone's picture in there and I changed their names.
Okay, so again, if you want, I'll put the link to her PowerPoint, or I'll do it as a PDF in the show notes. So if you want to get those show notes, just type clues in the comments and you'll get the link to her PDF. So thank you. That's awesome.
The next story is very near and dear to my heart. And if you go to the picture of Laurie, you're going to see the kids from the back. I'm not going to show you their faces. But the little girl in the blue is my granddaughter. And the little blonde next to her is my daughter's best friend's little girl. And she has a rare genetic significant syndrome. And I've known her since she was born. I went to her first IFSP meeting with her mom. I told Mom at her 1-year review when she was 2 years old that I felt that it was more than just a motor delay, and I really felt she needed a neurological examination. I got her hooked up with one of my friends from PEP, Dr. Tom Riley. We had dinner together, and he gave Mom the same information and all the phone numbers and what she needed to do to get hooked up with Children's Hospital, where he used to be the chief of neurology. And they did get the neurological exam and an MRI to diagnose her with a rare syndrome. She was getting ready to go into preschool, and she started preschool this fall. And this picture is taken from my retirement party, and that day she had received her first walker, and it's the first time that she walked. She was 2 years old. My granddaughter's 3. They're a year apart. And she has a beautiful gold walker. And as she walked into my retirement party at this lovely little Victorian place in Edgewater, Colorado, my granddaughter says to her, you know, Laurie, I don't have my walker yet, so maybe you could just let me try yours out until I get one of my own. And I thought, God bless you, sweetheart. You're not even looking at this as a piece of adaptive equipment. You're looking at this as, well, my friend has one, and maybe she'll let me borrow it because it looks pretty cool. She is now walking independently without a walker, and she started preschool this fall. But I was very worried because she's never really been around other kids. And I didn't know how to support this family at the IEP for the kind of supports that she would need in a preschool setting. And my greatest fear is that she would sit by herself on the rug until staff engaged her in something because she lacks motor and language skills. So I called my, you're going to like this one, Charmaine. I called my church, Mile High Church, because I volunteer in the toddler room on Sundays. And they had a 2-week summer camp, an experiential camp And I asked if there was any way, if there was an opening, that this little girl could come for 2 weeks, 3 days, 6 days total, if I would offer to be there as her one-on-one. And they said, we would love to have her. And they actually were full, but they took her anyway. So then I called her mom. I hadn't even told her mom I did this yet. And I said, here's the deal. If I could spend 6 days with her in a preschool setting, I could then come up with a strength and needs list for you of what support she's going to need in preschool. And I can't tell you that right now because I've never seen her in another setting, and I've never seen her with a group of kids. So the family got her enrolled. We came up with a Meet My Child, her likes and dislikes. We got everything set, and I hung out with her for 6 days in a 4-hour-a-day program at my church over the summer. And from that, if you move on, I was able then to generate a list of strengths and interests, as well as concerns or barriers, to take to the IEP meeting and share with them when they did her IEP. She loved the preschool program. The kids adored her. She participated in everything with some prompts and some models. Music was her favorite thing, anything with music or movement, in spite of her physical challenges. She, after a couple days, was able to begin to self-select. I'd say, which one do you want to do? Pretty soon she was saying, paint next, sand next, and telling me where she wanted to go. A lot of parallel play, but she would play alongside the kids and watch the kids and model what they were doing. She would say, need my chair, because I had to make sure she had a chair with arms on it. So they got it from the toddler room because nobody else needed a chair with arms, which was not a big deal. But when she moved from area to area, she'd tell me, need my chair. She would go up to the kids and say, guys, me play too? And she would start to initiate entering into play. She was willing to try just about anything just after she watched the kids do it. But I also, having spent 6 days from her, I kept in pretty close tabs. I wasn't always within 2 feet of her because I wanted independence, but I also knew that she was not going to have a one-on-one going into a preschool classroom of 16 kids with 2 staff. And I needed to at least be able to say, for her to be safe in the classroom, this is what she needs. She'd need that physical environment adapted for her safety. We put her walker in a little parking space. We taped off a parking space, and then we would park the walker when she wasn't using it so it didn't just get left in the middle of the floor. We would have the kids ask permission to touch it. Frequently, she would stand and kind of toddler stagger across the room, and when she got off balance, she would grab a child for support. Many of the girls were really good about stabilizing and letting her get her balance back. Some of the kids were like, oh, don't grab me like that. And they would like flinch or move away, at which point I would have to move in. So the staff are going to need to be aware that if she's walking around the room, she might lose her balance and she might grab onto a kid for support. She needs continual supervision. That doesn't mean she needs a one-on-one para, but you have got to have eyes on her in case she stands up and starts to walk and isn't real steady, especially in the outside area. I could watch her time and time again over those 6 days, reach a point where she was doing fine, and then she would be totally overwhelmed sensory from an activity. The kids would be painting each other. She would be fine until the point that she wasn't, at which point her hands went up, her eyes went blank, and she froze. She could not get out of that. So if you weren't watching it, then it would become a problem. If you had your eyes on her, you could see her starting to reach that point, and you could swoop in and redirect her and give her a chance to calm down. But you had to have your eyes on her. She was very tactile defensive, and I knew that this playground that they had wood chips, and that was the one thing I noticed that she wanted nothing to do with. So they'd have to make some outside accommodations. But being able to walk into the IEP meeting with a list of, in a preschool setting, these are the things that I observed. And it wasn't working with her as much as stepping back and watching her was probably as valuable as all of the individual assessments, maybe more valuable, giving her developmental levels in each of the areas. And when we met with the preschool staff and had a meeting and shared all of these, immediately the director at the site started jotting down exactly what they needed to do to make sure that she could be successfully included in that classroom. So it was a blessing to be able to do that for her, and I think it made a world of difference. We don't always have the luxury of having somebody to be able to stand there over 5 or 6 days and really watch, but to be able to do that provided more information than any individual assessment would have done. It had to be done within a routine with other kids. So I was just blessed that I was able to help the family out in that way. So they're going to get the PowerPoint. So I'm just going to give snapshot on the next 6 or 7 slides and talk through them fast.
Okay.
Because these are going to be about behavior.
Okay.
So what we know about behavior is that behavior is related to the context in which it's observed. Behavior looks different at home than it does at school. A teacher may say, I've never seen that before. Or the parent might say they don't do that at home, and that's probably accurate. You see different behavior in different settings. What we really want to do for positive behavior support, and why it's so important to keep our eyes open and to always be watching and learning, is the next slide is, we want to prevent the challenging behavior from happening in the first place. Much easier to prevent than it is to deal with it. We need to, and all those strategies of watching what their favorites are, and what they're defensive about, and what time of day, those are all prevention things that we can put in place. We need to identify and teach a new behavior instead. Instead of whining, you need to ask for help. Instead of hitting your friend, you need to say, can I play? Instead of grabbing the toy, you need to say, my turn. And then we need to reinforce the new behavior. Great job taking a deep breath. I like the way you tapped your friend on the shoulder. You know, that was a really good thing to use that break card and take a 5-minute break, or to ask to put your headphones on because it was too loud, or to say right now I need a hug, I'm too upset to talk, or I'm going in my bedroom because I'm mad at you. We need to reinforce the behavior that we want to see. We know that behavior communicates the intent and it serves a useful purpose. And sometimes we get caught up in what's happening, and if we step back again, we can look at what happened right before the behavior, what the child does, and what our response or payoff is. And I'll use my dear granddaughter for an example. She's a smart little cookie, and she's got mom and dad wrapped around her little finger. And she wasn't quite 3 years old when she figured out that dad was much more likely to give in than mom was. She's a verbal little gal, let me tell you. So when she asked her mom if she could have another piece of chocolate, and her mom said, no, you could have one after dinner, Kate very nicely said, fine, then I'm going to go and ask my dad. And she walks right into the living room and says, Dad, can I have another piece of chocolate? And he said, what did your mom say? And she goes, oh, I didn't think you'd say that. Because they had talked about the fact that she was using them against each other. So the payoff was, Dad said, what did your mom say? She said, I could have one after dinner. And he goes, I think that's a great idea. You can have one after dinner. And she huffs off and says, that did not work. Well, in the past, it did work. So they had to change their behavior because she was really getting the payoff for what she wanted by just throwing her little fit and charming her dad and getting her way. So when we are observing and looking, we want to look at one behavior. You know, you could have a list of 20 things that concern you. Pick one. And then think about, what is the behavior you're looking at? Who's involved when it happens? When does this behavior occur? Where does it occur? Only in really stimulating environments. And why do we think it happened? And we really have to pay attention to why we think it's happening. Then we have to ask ourselves, how are we responding to this behavior that may actually reinforce it? And what do we want our child to learn instead? Before I do any kind of a plan at all, I just want to know, does the child actually know how to do that? Do they know how to clean their room? Do they know how to do long division? Do they know how to play cooperatively with their brother or their sister? Because if we're asking them to do something and they don't know how to do it, it's not going to work so well. Are they getting a payoff or getting a need met for this behavior? And my best example of that is my son, the dancer, was a tapper. He always had a part of his body moving. And in church, instead of his fingers tapping, his feet tapped on the pew. And it was a habit. It was a habit. He was just doing it. So I would say, I would just ignore it because it didn't bother me. But it bugged his big sister, who then would whisper to me, please tell Patrick to stop tapping on the pew. I would say, Patrick, could you stop tapping? It's bugging your sister. Okay, now he gets a payoff. He knows that he's bugging his sister, so he's tapping 3 times faster and 3 times more furiously with a smirk in his face because now he knows he's got his sister kind of ticked off in church. So are they getting a payoff? Are they doing it because it's a habit and they're not even aware of doing it? And do we need to teach it right now? I don't know about you, but I would not teach a 3-year-old to put their shoes on if I'm late for work and it's snowing outside and the roads are bad. So pick a time or place when things are really calm to look at behavior change. And maybe sometimes you just need to do the best to get out the door in the morning with everybody in the best mood that they possibly can be in. So just a couple more slides. I mean, we need to look at, and again, you have to step back sometimes and think about it because we get so caught up in the moment. What are they trying to get? When we hang up the phone and say, what did you want? Bingo, they got our attention. It worked. When we give in and say, fine, you can have another piece of chocolate now, and then they don't eat their dinner, kind of shot ourselves in the foot on that one. When kids need more stimulation and we let them get up and move around, then we're addressing the need of their behavior. The other side of the spectrum is they want to escape or avoid something. They don't want to do what you're asking. They don't want to go to bed. They don't want to put their toys away. They don't want to clean their room. And let me tell you, throwing a fit is a great way to avoid cleaning your room. Because at that point, I used to say, fine, just go and sit down, and I ended up cleaning the room. I just reinforced that negative behavior. I go into a place like Costco, and it is so stimulating, overstimulating for me, and you wonder why kids are having a meltdown on Saturday morning when there's 1,000 people in the store. They need to get away. There's too much going on. Maybe you need to either go by yourself or come in the evening when there's not as many people or at 10 o'clock in the morning. So just to be aware, as we're watching, we're trying to figure out what are they trying to get or what are they trying to avoid. Pay attention to situations that set up their behavior when they're tired, when there's a change in routine, when they're going back from mom to dad's house, when a babysitter is coming. What can you do to decrease the likelihood that they're going to have a meltdown when the babysitter gets there? Talk about it in advance. Pick out the pajamas they're going to wear. Identify which books they want the babysitter to read. Stay for a few minutes and do that smooth transition. Have that preferred snack for after you leave and they've had their bath so that there's kind of a built-in incentive there that they only get this special snack when the babysitter comes. That makes the babysitter a little bit more desirable. Pay attention to what sets off the behavior. Asking them to turn the TV off now. I suspect that many of you that are watching don't have kids that do now really well. So we can prevent that challenging behavior by setting up 5-minute warning, 2-minute warning. Now it's time for bed, time for the ice cream. So really think about how we are preventing that behavior. And then again, how does our behavior reinforce the series of unfortunate events? And my favorite is the grocery store, where I used to take 3 kids, and we were probably a little wild crew in the grocery store. And when I hear the meltdown on aisle 9, and the mom says, no, 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 and then says, fine, put it in the cart, I want to cringe and say, no, you've just taught them next time they come to the grocery store that if they fuss long enough and loud enough, they're going to get Captain Crunch. There's the payoff for their behavior. So in summary, when we look at behavior strategies for kids, and my last 2 examples are behavior, is really looking at redesigning environments. We're not changing kids. And really we're asking ourselves to change our behavior in order to help our kids to be more successful. So there's only one slide for this one, and it's Jack. And I did a presentation at Peak Parent Center's Inclusion Conference quite a few years ago. And afterwards, a parent came up to me and said, is there any way that you would come into our state and help us do a behavior plan for our child if we paid you? And I said, I'd be happy to talk to you about it. Well, as it turned out, I was able to work with the school district, and the school district contracted for me to come in and help with a behavior plan for this kiddo. And he was in a class, he had extensive support available, but was not making the academic progress or the behavior progress that the family really wanted to see. So I set up one day to go in and just observe in the classroom. I did phone calls on functional behavioral assessment interviews with folks over the phone. And then I went back second day and we did a behavior plan in the morning and kind of a program implementation plan with strategies in the afternoon. Okay. The nutshell was I went for a half day to observe, and I couldn't observe past lunchtime. I had to do something. I saw a little guy who, as I'm doing my little faith act, I'm generating a list of strengths, and I'm thinking some of the activities you have him doing, he's been doing for a long time. He's not engaged. You're kind of going through the motions of numbers and things, and you're not getting it. You're not getting anywhere. But he loved the computer, and they did have it set up when he did X number of work with the paraprofessional, reading during reading time, math during math time, at a very much reduced level, that he could go onto the computer. So I'm watching him on the computer, and I said, he doesn't read. They said no, and I said, how is he able to find? He had buffalo pages. He loved buffaloes. And I thought, how is he able to find these buffaloes? And they said, we don't really know how, but somehow he's able to go in and locate these pages, right? And then he was able to print a buffalo page. So I'm thinking, he's got better computer skills. And I said, can he recognize his name? No, we don't think so. I said, can he write his name? No, we don't think so. I said, okay. So I'm sitting back and watching for a while. So I'm asking, my interview's over. I'm now asking questions. And I said, what's his favorite thing? And I can't think of the little people. Who are the little people in the movie that they're yellow with eyes?
Oh, the Minions?
The Minions. Okay. That was his favorite thing in the whole wide world, right? So I'm thinking, I said, he likes the Minions. Yeah. His goal is numbers 1 through 5. I'm thinking, you're getting nowhere with flashcards and preschool activities. He's in 3rd grade. So I go down, I'm talking to the secretary and the principal, and I said, what I would do, if you ask me what I would do, since you paid me to be here, I would make a Minion book. He's really into the Minions, and he's into animals. He loves animals. And I would have, because they have different numbers of eyes and stuff. So I said I would have like a big one and one Minion, and I have them match them and count them and this and that. I swear an hour later I went downstairs, and the secretary hands me a laminated 1 to 5 Minion book that has big bold words, his name on it, the numbers, everything. I said, you made this? She goes, wasn't this what you wanted? I thought, how wonderful. The whole school is vested in helping this kid. They just weren't quite sure where to go. So within like 15, 20 minutes, you should see him going through this Minion. He's counting them out. He's telling them how many. He's engaged. He wants to print Minions there. He's counting their eyes. And they're looking at me like, you've got to be kidding. So I said, okay, we're going to try something else. He had a 4-letter name. It's not Jack, but that's okay. He used a little Alpha Smart. So I got 4 little colored dots, and I dotted the 4 letters on it, and I made in large letters his name in 4 colors, and I showed him how I typed it, and he could print it out, right, in color, right? So 5 minutes later, this kid is following the colored dots and typing his name. 10 minutes later, we took the dots off, and he typed his name from a model, black and white model. I said, am I allowed to take a video? And they said, well, we're not allowed to do videos with our phone in class, but, they're paying you to be here. So if you want to take a video with your phone, you can take a video with your phone. I sent it to the parents. 5 minutes later, I get a phone call. They said, oh my God, are you telling me he can type his name by himself in one day? I said, he can type his name by himself in 10 minutes. He was highly motivated. It came out on the printer. He did it. He made it happen. I went to dinner at the family's house. That was part of my deal. If I came out, you'd have to invite me over to your house for dinner. I talked to them on the phone. You've got 5 family members. I want placemats that have 1 to 5 on them. And then you pick your number of what you're going to do that night. I got there, and they already had the placemats made for dinner time, where everybody in the family picked the number they were going to be that night, and he set the table with everybody's numbers. So the key was he had lots and lots of skills. They weren't capturing them. He had them wrapped around his finger because they were so afraid that they were going to frustrate him and he would blow up, that he had no way to ever learn how to deal with frustration, what to do when he got frustrated, how to tell you how he's feeling, how to take a break. When I came back up the second day, we did the morning with a behavior plan, putting in all kinds of strategies based on interviews with teachers. And I got to say, this administration actually got subs for the whole team. I had the principal, both parents, the special ed teacher, the classroom teacher, the teacher for the following year that was going to get him, the speech therapist, and the occupational therapist, all there. And as I said, what about a social story for when you go on field trips? Because he acted up on field trips. And then they said, we can do that. We can do that. They're generating lists of strategies. And the idea was, once we got this plan in place on paper for the next year, they would just have to adjust it based on his schedule for the next year and just kind of cut and paste it in to a new template and have it proceed and progress up to the next year. So I was going to come back the next year, help them do this. I got a call the first week of school, and they said, we hate to tell you that we really don't need you to come back, but what you showed us, we can do it. And we already took his last year plan, and we upped it to the 4th grade level, and we incorporated his new schedule and new routines, and we put in the supports that he needs, and he's doing fine. And I thought, thank you, Mom, for coming up to me and saying, could you help? You had great school administrative support. You had people willing to do whatever needed to be done. You had committed parents who were willing to take time off of work and work on this. And you just needed to put it all together to create a plan for this child so that he could actually maximize his potential and learn new behavior and social skills. Because if they kept going the way they were going, he would have a one-on-one para with him in high school. Just kind of keeping things calm as opposed to challenging him to develop and learn new skills and deal with changes in routine and express how he's feeling and asking for a break when he needed one by identifying that he's a little overwhelmed right now instead of chasing him down the hall. But again, it was just watching. I mean, I couldn't have done it over the phone. I had to sit in that room and just watch. And what I watched is a teacher who did everything she could to include him, who gave lots of positive acknowledgement, a paraprofessional who would have done anything in the world to help him be successful. But I watched what he was hooked into. I watched what he didn't care about. I watched his interactions with the kids. One of the things at recess time, because I went out to recess, is for about 5 or 10 minutes, he would just walk around and watch the kids. Then third grade girls, he was able to do things to make them laugh. And then because they were laughing, then maybe he'd pick up a few little stones and throw them. And then they'd giggle and run away. And then he would chase them even more. And then they would get tired of it. And then they would get mad at him. So then he would up the ante by getting a stick. And pretty soon he was in trouble and sitting out. So I said, he can handle the first 5-10 minutes just watching. He can handle 5 or 10 minutes of a structured activity. So all we did was say, he could play basketball for 5 minutes, not for 20 minutes. So let's break recess into 4 or 5 minute sections. 5 minutes you just get to walk around and do. Then you engage him in a small group activity with kids playing a game. Then he's off by himself for 5 minutes in an area where you're providing feedback for positive social. Then you pull him back in, and then you give him the job of collecting the equipment and taking it inside so he doesn't run away when it's time to go in because he's already inside with a preferred staff. And, just from watching outside, we came up with a recess plan that worked as well.
So, Kiki, we're going to be kind of running out of our time here, but I will give people the PDF because I know you also have a story about Mario. And I'm wondering if we can just kind of jump to the end where you talk about the clay figures.
Okay, I can do Mario real fast. Mario is not my child. It's with great pleasure that I co-presented last week with a teacher from a school, and Mario was her example. And she did the Meet My Child. She identified the challenges and concerns. She set up a successful plan for Mario. And what she noticed is that he was holding on to clay that other kids used after they had a clay activity. She was tempted to take the clay away because he was playing with it until she realized that he was making clay figures. And over the course of several days, his clay figures represented how he was feeling that day. So these are just 2 of the clay figures he made. One day he made a clay figure that was holding on by the tip of its finger, almost falling off the table. It was so upset. She also used this to share with Mom positive strategies, how to incorporate this. And the most exciting thing about this is my daughter. This example I co-presented with my daughter at a conference, and Mario is one of her children. Wow. And she's the one who put all the pieces together, came up with the plan, and as a parent, I couldn't be much prouder than her coming up and identifying this as a get-go of a way to engage this child and allow him to express his feelings in a very outside-the-box way.
How wonderful. That is so fabulous.
And then the last one, you can look at the pictures later if you can get it. But when I was at Head Start, I was asked to do a training for families on nurturing their children's strengths. And I had no idea if this was going to work or not. But what I did is I had them do a Meet My Child, things their child likes. And then we talked about inner strengths and things that you can't really see. And then I asked them to think of some quirks about their child that they kind of see as negative, and could we reframe them as positive? So instead of saying stubborn or fearful, uncomfortable in new situations, firm in his convictions, very open with his feelings instead of he's just too emotional, and have them really talk about that. And then I gave them, and I thought, I don't know how it's going to turn out, but let's just see. I gave them these big foam sheets that were nice and tactile, all kinds of paint Sharpie markers, and all kinds of little flower and decals that they could peel off. And I asked them to make a visual of a flower garden that expressed who their child was. And the pictures are what the parents did. And I said nothing. And for 10 minutes, it was silence because I didn't tell them how to do the activity. I said, I want you to create a beautiful flower that represents who your child is. And each one of them is different. Some are in English, some are in Spanish. But the words on there are loving, open, joyful. And they had the most phenomenal time sharing with each other. This is a garden, going down the garden of life with my daughter and all of her attributes. They created these on their own. I did nothing other than put the supplies out there and prompt them to use the visuals to create something they could share about the positive attributes of their child. These aren't smart. These aren't does well in school. These are heartfelt feelings from a parent of who their child was, and they loved it.
Oh, I bet.
And they got to take them home to share with their kids. Not one is that none of them are the same. They're all different.
Right.
So my favorite two quotes to end are, you are someone with great potential. You have the ability to make each day special. Each new morning comes to us gift wrapped and fresh out of the box are moments we've never experienced before, opportunities we've never known, and chances we've never taken. What a truly magnificent gift. Those with the same old outlook let the chances just slip away. But those who understand the value of a gift, well, they have a chance to turn the present into a really extraordinary day. I told you I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Mr. Rogers is quite in the news these days. Continues to be my personal childhood hero. And my favorite quote, as we sit back or stand back and just watch, it's tempting to think that a little isn't significant and that only a lot matters. But most things that are important in life start very small, change very slowly, and they don't come with fanfare and bright lights. So think of something little that will make a big difference down the way. And then I had to throw in a picture of my dog that I adopted last week. And I have 3 female puggles, all of whom were quiet while I was on the computer today. And underneath my desk, I have my brand new Watson, who is going to be on Animal Planet in the spring on Rocky Mountain Jeff's show. And they're going to end up with him being adopted by me. So that's Watson.
How wonderful.
Handsome boy. So yes. I just want to thank everyone for spending time today, for coming back and looking at it. And I thank Charmaine for all of her enthusiasm.
Well, and I am sorry we couldn't actually show your face, Kiki. For some reason, the tech gods weren't with us, but I'm just in awe of the abilities that you have. And I want other parents to know that this is something that you can develop. And it's like, jot down those little things that you notice about your child. Ask friends that know your child what they've noticed. And share that with the staff and use that. And that can, really inform the behavior plan that you come up with. So, Kiki, I don't know if, because we're out of time here, if people ask questions, if you can come back to this Facebook page and type in some answers for people.
Certainly.
Would that work? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And and Julianne had a comment here. She said that if people haven't heard about the book, Just Give Him the Whale by Paula Kluth and Patrick Schwartz, that's an excellent book to show how you take your child's interests and fascinations and use those for instructional strategies or use them for behavior plans. But I want to thank everybody for being here with us live or watching the replay. You can share this video so other friends will have access. Remember, type in the word clues and I'll give you the show notes, which will include Kiki's PDF of our show. So until next Thursday at noon Mountain Time, I'm Charmaine Tanner. I am passionate about helping you become an even better advocate for your child. So thank you, and we shall see you next Thursday. Take care.
Great. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.